path, described spoken language as the first industrial tool, but he might also have seen the co-creativity involved as non-simultaneous and non-instantaneous, instead requiring artful interplay between two or more personalities. Here then one might ask, what sort of industry did early humans engage in between 10,000 and 1 million years ago? After a previous million years of not speaking in coherent terms, what flash of intuition occurred to induce the commingling of sounds with other senses? Surely this was no ordinary industrial activity to be characterized as either work or play. It probably had neither the drudgery of present-day labor nor the disengaged escapism of contemporary leisure. Based on one primitivist theory, I suspect naming objects and or events may have started among intimate friends, exploring the sounds of their own voices along with other senses, much the same way improvisation may precede musical composition. People have often said technology is just a tool, with each of us personally responsible for how we use it. But I find technology is really someone's art. Like a painting or sculpture, it also has a creator and an underlying mentality, albeit anonymously, so it is never solely ours. Prehistoric tools were created by and for those who use them, but civilization, with modern emphasis on consumers and spectators instead of creators and participants, alienates many from their own latent creativity. If language is a tool and a technology, then we must each use it as artfully as possible. Today's highly virtualized and standardized society, dominated by such technologies as artificial intelligence and mass media, often overshadows our own latent creativity and seems to think for us, who now risk losing the ability to think and speak with our own voice. I consider civilization a way of life, emphasizing artificial structures over natural ones. Creative acts most certainly generated such structures, and such acts arguably had an initially natural, instinctive impetus. Creativity, like Jung's notion of mental health, entails making the subconscious conscious. Our primitive ancestors, ushering in humanity's transition from nature to civilization, may have had little or no sense of having a subconscious. Their innovations may have been shrouded in mystery even to themselves. People, then perceiving themselves to be atomistically individual, probably found such creativity divinely inspired, thus invoking various creationist deities and the notion of intelligent design. Little did they know that intelligence depends on design, and, accepting genuine sages or mystics, that their own sub- or superconscious minds were the true divinities here. Creation is no contrived act. It is a path of least resistance from subconscious to conscious to superconscious. As Jung indicated in Man and His Symbols, the subconscious mind is quite living proof of the illusion of the individual. Certainly, creativity does involve personal expression, but if personality were completely unique and unintelligible to others, would one need to express oneself at all? Thus, the sole difference between myself and yourself may be the ongoing shuffle of our respective cards, and not the cards themselves. Vigilantly tracking this shuffle, then comparing notes with others, may be the real-life goal here, a question of individuation, not individuality. Fuller called universe a minimum of two pictures, and unity plural, and at least two. Unity here is process, two or more shaving off over time into one. Unity as an end result is not observable in our ordinary three dimensions, five physical senses, and linear time. Pre-civilization people sought personal fulfillment through creative acts, whether cave paintings, pottery, music, or rudimentary living structures. All these acts reflected some exploration of personal potential and were neither purely utilitarian nor purely escapist. For various reasons, perhaps in response to seemingly chaotic natural phenomena, or to avoid being marginalized by growing populations, power structures developed in the form of civilization. And certain types of creation accelerated ahead of others in the form of agricultural fields, tool making, and crude city structures. Thus, standardization also developed, diverting attention from subconscious drives, fostering the conscious illusion that only privileged people were creative. Such standardized creativity, though seeming more utilitarian and depersonalized, still expressed itself through the distinctive geometric patterns of agricultural fields, buildings, and city streets. Whatever the reason, civilization was an attempt to emphasize order over seeming chaos. Seemingly amorphous textures of nature, not sufficiently investigated, may have been assumed to exist outside the known patterns humanity increasingly explored through certain creative acts. And standardizing these patterns generated artificial common denominators like currencies, measurements, and writing systems, whereby local peoples increasingly identified themselves. But texture never exists outside pattern, and the unique texture of any life, whether yours or mine, may be perceived as an interweaving of various patterns. Late 19th century stage of the Industrial Revolution, when civilization asserted itself more fully than ever, brought more developments. Linguistics through Saussure became increasingly standardized as semiology. He saw language composed of signs, namely a signifier made of marks or phonemes, and a signified, which is the denotative meaning linked to the signifier. Saussure assumed signs were arbitrary creations. The primordial synesthesia whereby the subconscious combines the five senses may have been unfathomable to him. Saussure also acknowledged a sign to have a referent, which is the immediate, personal, present moment meaning of a sign. But he only gave this referent cursory attention, considering it more the domain of psychology. In short, Saussure rendered both the creative process underlying language and the moment-to-moment evolution of meaning irrelevant. The standardized, socialized aspect of signs was paramount. But a sign, with a signifier and signified, but no referent, is only 2/3 of a word. I call this mostly unheralded development in linguistic evolution the birth of modern banality. Though seemingly innocuous at the time, the predominance of signs acting as words solidified the Cartesian mind-body split and led us right up to our highly virtualized society that we live in today. Other banalities also asserted themselves. Despite Darwin's recent theories, people gave little thought to the future direction of human evolution. Newly developed disciplines like neuroscience sought only past tense answers to this present tense question, as animals, despite limited capacity for abstraction and language, were assumed to have appropriate analogs for the human brain in experiments. Freud, though acknowledging the subconscious, interpreted it in terms of first sex, then the death wish, failing to see that frustrated creative drives may have underlined both. Civilization and its discontents pessimistically found civilization and nature both humanly unbearable. All this evidently ignored Thoreau's suggestion decades before that the intelligence of the civilized man could ideally be combined with the physical strength, resiliency, and self-reliance of the savage. Western science, contrasted with Western religious superstitions, certainly did usher in some progress, but debates between the two are ultimately moot, as both disciplines made similar assumptions about deeper dimensions of human thought and the relationship between civilization and nature. For centuries, scientific and religious circles both believed that animals could not feel pain, and many similar assumptions were made about small children and infants. Sexually unorthodox practices were seen by both science and religion as diseases to be cured. Private thoughts and lives, which may have found a healthy outlet through artistic pursuits, meditation, or simply loving intimate relationships, were often dismissed or underestimated by both religion and science as idle and unproductive to society. Many primitive cultures already instinctively knew such assumptions were incorrect, but many of these assumptions were still popularly accepted by civilizations well into my own lifetime. Maybe even yours. Eastern thought, acknowledging personal contemplation and not just institutionalized dogma, may have bridged some of these gaps. But idiomatic English translations of Buddhist, Taoist, and yogic teachings were quite rare until 40 to 50 years ago. Thoreau, well-versed in Latin, Greek, and rough English translations of Eastern classics, moved quite well between science, spirituality, language, art, philosophy, and nature itself. As bodies of knowledge to learn from, all disciplines validly add to the texture of life. But no one discipline can be raised to the status of a universal pattern. Thus, pattern recognition itself may be the real discipline needed for our ongoing evolution.